Whether this is your first time joining us or whether you're a long-time supporter, we welcome you to the place to be challenged by leading speakers and to advance important ideas collectively. I'm Lisa Harris, CEO of Eskenazi Health, and I'm honored to serve as president of the Economic Club of Indiana this season. Before we get to our introductions, as we continue to celebrate this milestone golden anniversary, we want to take a moment at each of our luncheons to recognize and honor our roots. So I'm going to draw your attention to a video that was created by one of our newest platinum sponsors, Mojo Up Marketing. So let's go ahead and let that video roll.
Welcome to the Economic Club of Indiana, where we've been leading engaging thought since 1974. Virtually every great American city has a forum for intellectual exchange. In Central Indiana, that forum is the Economic Club of Indiana. Our roots trace back to the Penrod Society, a group dedicated to supporting cultural and educational activities in Indianapolis.
Visionaries David S. Orr and John Medvicic and Theodore R. Boehm, inspired by the success of similar clubs in Detroit and Chicago, founded the Economic Club of Indiana on September 16, 1974.
Our journey began with an inaugural event featuring former U.S. Attorney General Elliot L. Richardson, drawing nearly 900 attendees. This was just the beginning.
Over the years, we have hosted a remarkable lineup of speakers, including Secretary of State George Shultz, who set an attendance record in 1985, and foreign dignitaries like former British Prime Minister Edward Heath. These events established the club as a premier platform for influential voices.
The value of the Economic Club today lies in its ability to bring people together. By fostering dialogue and collaboration, we help shape policies and initiatives that drive Indiana forward. Our members benefit from exposure to cutting-edge ideas and the opportunity to connect with thought leaders and innovators. This engagement enriches our community and strengthens our collective ability to address both local and global issues.
As we look to the future, the Economic Club of Indiana is focused on leading the way. We are dedicated to inspiring and equipping both established and emerging leaders with the knowledge and motivation to create positive change. Our forums will continue to feature visionary speakers who challenge us to think differently, act boldly, and embrace new solutions.
The Economic Club of Indiana will play a significant role in shaping the future of our state. By fostering an environment of intellectual curiosity and civic engagement, we will continue to inspire leaders to advance great ideas for the common good. Together, we can build a brighter future for Indiana, one innovative idea at a time.
Join us at the Economic Club of Indiana,
where leaders are made and ideas come to life.
Pretty remarkable, isn't it? And of course, it's all of you in this room, our sponsors, our members, our community as a whole, who have allowed the Economic Club to deliver on its mission for these many 50 years. Before I introduce our guests at the President's table, I want to make sure we extend particular gratitude to our presenting sponsor, One America Financial, and our platinum sponsors, all of which are represented behind me on these banners. Many of these organizations have been supporting us for 15 to 20 years or more. So let's give a big round of applause for this generosity. And last season, our luncheon conversations often became trending topics online. Let's keep that momentum going by expanding today's conversation through social media. So if you haven't already, this is the place where you get to get out your phones, turn them on, post, tweet, or like us so that your friends will know that you're involved in the lively conversations at the Economic Club of Indiana. The Economic Club Twitter handle is at EconomicClubIn. You can tweet using the hashtag EconLunch. You can also find us on Facebook and the Economic Club of Indiana. And as you hopefully know from our pre-event email, we offer a special parking rate thanks to our friends at Dennison Parking. So if you parked in the Plaza Park garage, please be sure to pick up a QR code after lunch to pay a special event parking rate of a flat $12 for today. For reference, that's the normal price of 1 hour of parking. So we thank you, Dennison, for that. Let's give them a round of applause. And now we'll present our president's table. Would each of you please stand as I introduce you? Again, we are pleased to have One America Financial as our presenting sponsor for the season. Joining us today from One America Financial is Chris Pohl, Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer. Thank you. Welcome, Chris. And next we have Polina Osherov, Executive Director at Pattern Indy. We're very pleased to welcome Pattern Indy as one of our new platinum sponsors this season. Welcome, Polina. And next, Mel Raines, who was our moderator for today's conversation. Mel has been with Pacers Sports and Entertainment since 2015, serving as President and Chief Operating Officer before taking the helm as CEO in 2024. With more than 30 years of event operations, legislative, political, corporate, and public affairs experience, the name Mel Raines is synonymous with successful, monumental events, which is why she was named an Indianapolis Business Journal Woman of Influence in 2020 and selected as a Sports Business Journal Game Changer in 2021. Having served as the Vice President of Government Relations and Event Operations for the 2012 Indianapolis Super Bowl Host Committee, overseeing 14 planning committees, she was one of the main architects of Indianapolis' highly acclaimed 2012 Super Bowl. She also served as president of the 2024 NBA All-Star Local Organizing Committee this year, which brought in over $400 million for the city and central Indiana, a record-breaking economic impact. So let's all have a round of applause for Mel's enormous contribution to the vitality of our city. Then we have our featured panelist, Jenny Boyd, CEO of 45 Presents. Thank you. Dave Clark, Great Lakes Region President of U.S. Concerts at LiveNation. And Chris Gall, Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer with Visit Indy. It is stacking up to be a really fun conversation after lunch, and you'll hear more about these industry superstars then. So finally, we just join me in one more round of applause for all of our President's Table guests. As usual, you will find white cards on your table. If you have a question for any of our panelists today, you can fill out one of these cards, raise it up during our program, and one of the event team members will collect the questions. You may also tweet your questions to @EconomicClubIn, and we encourage you to continue to tweet after today's luncheon. So now please enjoy your lunch. Pick up the conversations where they left off. And we will be back shortly to begin the program. Thank you. I'm back. And this time, joining me, we have Mel Raines and our panelists. So we already did Mel. Before lunch, it was all about Mel Raines. But joining Mel for today's conversation regarding the business of entertainment in this, our Economic Club's 50th anniversary era. Get it? Anybody get it? No, maybe not. Maybe you should show your T-shirt. Maybe that... It's my pleasure to introduce today's panel of some of Indy's top entertainment industry experts. Committed to breaking down barriers and creating opportunities, Jenny Boyd is CEO of 45 Presents. Boyd works to coordinate, lead, and execute safe and inclusive live music events. 45 Presents is one of the largest independent concert promoters in Indiana, owning, operating, and programming some of the top destinations for entertainment across the state and the Midwest, including venues such as the Vogue Theater, Rock the Ruins at Holiday Park, the Toby at Newfields, the Rally Innovation Conference, Gang Gangs, I Made Rock and Roll Music Festival, and more. Next, we have Dave Clark, the Great Lakes Region President, U.S. Concerts at LiveNation. Clark is a seasoned industry veteran with over 3 decades of experience in the concert promotion business. In this role, Clark heads a team of promoters, marketers, and concert producers bringing world-class entertainment to millions of fans across the Midwest. And last but not least, Chris Gall, Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer, directing Visit Indy's strategic marketing, communications, community engagement, government relations, and partnership development. During his 19-year tenure at the nonprofit, Gall has led the effort to rebrand the organization and in doing strengthen Indy's brand in support of driving tourism to record-setting levels, which is why it's no surprise that he is among the Indiana 250 of influential business leaders designated by the Indianapolis Business Journal. I'll tell you, if our conversation at lunch is any indication, we're in for a fun discussion. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our panel.
Thanks for the friendship bracelet, by the way.
You're welcome.
It says Indy. I think he made it at Mel's Plaza.
Hello, everybody. So full disclosure, this panel was my idea, and so when it's your idea, you get to moderate the panel, so I'm lucky enough to be here today. When I was thinking of getting what I would wear today, I have 2 concert t-shirts. One is Metallica, and one is Taylor Swift, so you can infer my musical taste there, but I decided to go with Taylor Swift for obvious reasons. When I started 10 years ago at Pacer Sports Entertainment, my first job was the SVP of Facility Operations, which included the concert part of our business, and working with Marty Bechtold, many of you know him here, who's been doing that for us for, I think, close to 15 years, and working with Dave Clark also, who I knew absolutely nothing, and the 2 of them taught me everything I know about this, so I'm grateful for both of them being here today and for Dave coming down from Michigan. So this is a testament to how this has grown in our market. I mean, shows come when you sell tickets, and so I know had a record business year our last fiscal year. Obviously, Lucas Oil, I think, broke every record they had by a mile this calendar year too, so it's been really exciting for our city, and I'm glad you all wanted to hear more about it. So I thought I would start with a fun first question for these 3. What was your first concert, and where was it, and when was it? And what was the best concert you've seen, and where was it, and when was it? Jenny, you wanna?
Is it on? It is on. First of all, I'm just really grateful and honored to be here on this panel, and also in your presence, so thanks for having me. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, and one of my very best friends in elementary school, my childhood friends, her father was a talent buyer for the world's largest honky-tonk, which is Billy Bob's, Texas. And so I was much too young, but I remember seeing at Billy Bob's Willie Nelson and Robert O'Keefe and Trisha Yearwood and some of those folks that certainly I was probably too young to see, but were the most memorable. And then this past year, for my favorite show, has to be the Beyonce Renaissance Tour. Made it down to Louisville and saw that, and that was a production unlike anything I've ever seen. So it was.
Why did Beyonce not come to Indianapolis?
You know, let's ask a few people in the room. Start with you too, if you'd like to take that question. Yeah,
Now
that
that
would be
we've
mine.
gotten that off the table. Did you ride the bull at Billy Bob's?
No, I did not.
All right, we'll have to go back.
Lots of friends did it for one time only. Yeah.
Mel, thanks for the softball question. I had to try to Google when this concert was. I grew up outside of Detroit near the amphitheater called Pine Knob, and we used to go out into the parking lot and just listen to the music because we were just kids. We couldn't go in. So I kept on thinking, what was the first paid concert I went to without my parents? And it was 1985, and I think it was Bryan Adams. I think it was.
I also saw Bryan Adams in 1985.
Were you drinking Seagram's wine coolers underage in the parking lot? Just me? Okay.
I did not have wine coolers in the parking lot.
And then what was, and you said was my favorite? All right. Jenny and I were talking about when you get into the industry, it's so hard to disconnect from being in the industry and watching a show. I'd say, you know, coming down to Indianapolis, I've seen a lot of great shows out at what used to be called Deer Creek, and now is Ruoff.
I think it's always going to be called Deer Creek.
Okay, we got that.
I hope no one from Ruoff is here.
On an Indiana night, right? So whether it was Tom Petty, whether it was Bob Seger, whether it was multiple Fish concerts, I think those go down as I can disconnect and be in it. But I guess the best concerts for me is when my wife finally tells me she wants to go to a show, and I have to go out of town because I can't sit in the audience and enjoy myself. So we go see some shows, and I won't bore you with artists to try to look cool.
My first show was about 100 yards. I was in high school. It was June of 1994. It was about 100 yards in this direction. It was the Hoosier Dome, and I saw Pink Floyd. And I saw things and smelled things I had never seen before. My favorite show of all time, we used to live in Hawaii, and I represented and did marketing for a restaurant called Duke's. It's on Waikiki Beach. And Jimmy Buffett has a song called Duke's. And he sailed over from Maui to the island of Oahu and pulled up his catamaran as the sun set, did an acoustic set.
Braggart.
And I was there with my wife, and it was just this incredible experience, and he gave all the funds to a local nonprofit. So it was a neat memory.
Okay, Chris Gall wins. Next question. Chris, since we're coming off Taylor Swift weekend, I think we should start there. I have never seen this level of prep from a community for a concert, quite frankly. And so can you talk to us about how that came together and how it went for the city?
Well, thanks. First, we did a little promotion. Taylor Swift is moving on to Toronto to play. And so in partnership with Mel, underneath one of your seats, there are tickets, free tickets to Taylor Swift's show in Toronto.
That's an amazing story, Chris.
No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know if it answered the question.
It'd be much cooler if we did that. You know, that was a lie. And welcome to the Indiana Convention Center. So, to Mel's point, this was a page from our sports playbook, like the Indiana Sports Corps does so efficiently and effectively. We had such a unique relationship with the promoter, thanks to Pacer Sports Entertainment and LiveNation. And Eric Newberger and his team, Taylor and Marcy, stepped up and they said, let's do an LOC. Let's treat this like a sporting event. Let's not just treat it as a weekend. Let's engage IMPD in a meaningful way. Let's engage downtown Indy and everyone in our ecosystem so that we leverage this moment to the best of our ability as a city. So we missed out the last time. We felt and feel like she has an emotional connection to Indianapolis. She has grown up here. This was her 9th time playing in Indy. And so all the things had to align. Colts couldn't be at home, no major convention in this building. The hotels had to be clear, and that all aligned for that first weekend in November. And I remember Eric Newberger saying, hey, we're a finalist city. We've got to produce a video within 48 hours to show to the promoter, the management, and the artist why Indy over other major cities. And in that way, it was kind of like a bid based on these relationships, and we won the business, and 18 months of planning and preparation to make sure street closures were taken care of, to make sure that parents knew where the drop-off zone was, to make sure Uber and Lyft drivers knew where to go. This was not just a concert. It was important to us that the community could also feel like they could come downtown even if they didn't have a concert ticket. I don't know if Eric is here. I know Marcy and Taylor from the Lucas Oil Stadium team, but there they are. Yep.
Yeah, kudos to the Lucas Oil team. That was quite something. Wow. Yeah. Chris, do you quickly have any early estimates of how we did economically?
It's going to be, yes and no. It's going to be healthy 9 figures. I think we win in 3 major buckets. The first is brand exposure. If you think about Taylor Swift and attaching to that sweet-sounding word Indy, over 12 days, measured from the time we put up the decal at the JW Marriott through her departure, we had 993 national and international news stories about Indianapolis. That's about $183 million in value that you'd have to buy in advertising. We had 50,000 people stand to be the eye in Indy during that time frame, many in this room, I hope. We had record-setting website analytics, and one video production crew who's doing another documentary about Taylor Swift, who was on the ground here with beautiful shots of the city. We had 31 customers from a Visit Indy standpoint, people who had never been to our city and are not booking conventions in Indy. This was the VIP tour for us from a tourism perspective. If everyone in that who came books a conference, it's $550 million in economic impact. Of all the tourism taxes that are collected, the first one has come in, and that's hotel revenue. And in the history of Indianapolis, there has not been a weekend or any day where more revenue is generated for our hotels than in the Taylor Swift weekend, and it eclipsed the Super Bowl. So when it's all said and done, we win from a brand media exposure, we win with future convention business, and we win with immediate tax collection that helps our state and our city.
Yeah,
Can I have him talk to my mother who says, you do what for a living? I mean, come on, Mom.
No, it was an amazing weekend for the city. And so Dave, now, what do you tell your mother you do? No, you're an executive with the biggest music promoter in the world, and you're incredibly important to our music business in Indy. Could you talk about kind of what you do at LiveNation, but also what your business partners in Indy are? You own and operate, you partner with others.
So a question about what I do personally, not necessarily what LiveNation does.
No,
Yeah.
what you do.
So I talk on the phone all day. That's what my mother thinks I do. That's actually what my wife thinks I do, especially during the pandemic. She was like, could you get this out of this house, right? Go. Every day I thank that I've got a great team of people. There's a couple tables in the back for LiveNation folks to raise your hands. It takes an army of people to put together the concerts, not only to book them, so as Chris is talking about, trying to convince people to come to any given city. So we have a whole bunch of different silos of people that work in different things, and I have to learn how to do every bit of it and then rely on people to do something better than I can do myself personally. So I book shows, i.e., so those of you who are in any kind of business, you buy things and you sell things. So as a LiveNation promoter, I buy talent, and then we sell it to consumers to sell the tickets. So that's sort of a Reader's Digest version of pick things up, put them down, buy things, sell them. It sounds sort of rudimentary. It takes a lot of patience to work with a lot of egos in the industry on days. We try not to be the one with egos ourselves. But yeah, that's kind of what we do. But what it takes is a village of smart people to keep us on track, and that's where our partnerships come in, especially with venues. So whether it's Lucas Oil Stadium, or Gamebridge Fieldhouse, Mel, yourself, Andy. There is Marty over there who needs to get Mel more T-shirts, I hear. Whether it's our relationship with 45, I mean, there's a few things that happen. We cannot do shows, at our office. We need venues to do them in. So we have some of our own venues. We also have partner venues we work with. Our job is to also outreach to the community of media, whether it's public media that I met Michelle and JR today, or commercial media to help us promote our shows. Mel, it's tough to put into a nutshell. What I do daily is pretty much rely on a strong team of people to do, really help do the heavy lifting. And as Jenny and I were saying, is like, managing things. I didn't get up in the morning to say, I want to become a human resources manager. I got up in the morning to say, let's do this rock and roll thing. And we just, thank God we've got a great team of people, so I can actually play rock and roll promoter and I don't have to do the HR stuff.
Yeah. And can you speak a little bit more about the venue relationships you have here? So like Deer Creek, Ruoff, you own and operate.
Yeah, we own and operate. It's one of the largest amphitheaters in the country. It actually has, I think it's actually going to land the #1 amphitheater this year. Put over 800,000 paid tickets through this season, which is enormous volume in a short period of time. And it's not that big because the artists come, it's about the fans coming, right? It's, this job is about the ticket buyers and the people that want to support these artists, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? The way I think it is, none of us can have a career if it's not for the fan to buy a ticket. Some of the artists think that it's all about them, but the reality is it's all about the consumer. We start with those acts when they're smaller acts. There's not many of them that can go straight from the first single out to the stage of Ruoff. They've got to start somewhere else, whether it's coming to the Vogue, whether it's going to the Egyptian Room. We develop a lot of acts by playing them live. And back in the day, pre-internet, you had to have a platform for people to find out who you are. The internet really changed all that. We can talk about that more later. But the reality is we play artists live. People come and see them. They grow their fan base. We take them to the next stage. We get them up to, whether it's Everwise, a partnership with the park system, or we get to Gamebridge Fieldhouse and grow. And it starts with an experience. So our relationships with our venues really are, the venues are the ones that are helping the fan have a great experience. It's about, not just buying a ticket and seeing the show. It's about your whole experience when you're walking through the door and on the concourses. And all I've seen is this town's invested in its venues, which has been great. It makes it easier to want to bring shows here.
Yeah, I know the first time I saw the Pollstar ratings that Ruoff was the #1 amphitheater in the world for attendance. That shocked me. I don't think most people here realize how popular that venue is. Jenny, you are the CEO of what is maybe the most iconic music venue in Indy at the Vogue, and I know I was there in college, and I'm glad I didn't have social media then. I wouldn't have the job I have today. Can you talk about 45 Presents in a bigger sense? You've got a different mission and vision maybe than some others, and what kind of acts you look for, and how do you look to grow the business at these smaller venues?
Yeah, I think it's a good segue, especially after Dave was kind of talking about the ways in which venues really make the music ecosystem of a city. I will say, yes, many people have a Vogue story, if not everybody, and you can all share it later. Also glad that cameras probably weren't involved in many of your experiences. I think 45, the Vogue was purchased in 2019, perfect time to buy a live music venue. And really kind of the owners, Eric Tobias, Scott Craigie, and Andrew Davis really kind of thought to themselves, okay, how do we, going through COVID, how do we actually take this, what was kind of a fun project, and keep people in the middle of a bit of a chaotic crisis employed? And ultimately, kind of getting through that first year, how do we bring people back together, which is really how Rock the Ruins started. So if you have been to a Rock the Ruins show, it's at the beautiful setting of Holiday Park. Really proud of our partnership with Indy Parks and the ways in which we're able to leverage that beautiful surrounding. But if you went the first year, you were sitting in a box, there was socially distant, but you were together and you were with people. And so I think that actually is a really good illustrative example of, I think, what we're trying to do at 45, which is kind of make to Dave's point, kind of a guest experience the center of all of our venues. And so the hope is that you see that at the Vogue, where it still might look a little grungy and gritty, but you're still going to come and see artists that want to play in these kind of smaller theaters or that are growing their career. I think the Vogue for us is also a really useful tool for leveraging partnerships. And so to Dave's point, we're one of the few, if not only, 1,000-person indoor music venue in the city. And so that allows us to kind of work with folks like LiveNation or our good friends at MOKB, who are also independent promoters and doing really great stuff on the south side. How do we actually use that to build these partnerships, and not only to bring artists, but to also bring guests and fans to not only the city, but to these kind of parts and pockets of the neighborhood that we feel really proud of. I think one of the things that's important, and you started to touch on this, is the ways in which the Vogue allows us to, as a city, kind of build this pipeline to build art, to grow artists. You started to allude to this, but your favorite artist didn't necessarily start at Ruoff or Deer Creek, right? Your favorite artist started in a very small room. And so I feel, not only the responsibility to keep alive and honor the kind of history of the Vogue, but also how are we building our own pipeline of venues so that we're growing those artist relationships and making sure that there is a thriving music scene, not only locally in the city with independent venues, but also that that we're bringing artists that are going to be able to do what we've talked about, more recently with Taylor Swift, or make Ruoff the #1. They need that pipeline of venues to be able to do that, and I feel really proud that we're able to do that in partnership with so many powerhouses, quite frankly, in the promotion space, but also for us to be able to grow that on our own with 45. And so you mentioned a couple of those, but really making sure that we're centering guest experience, building a pipeline of venues so that we're able to kind of grow artists in the market, and ultimately, start to introduce you all as concert goers to new artists and new music that you want to hear. And so how are we finding the stages to put those artists on, and then how are we inviting you and making sure you get there and have a really great experience really is the crux of what we're trying to do at 45.
Mel, can I say something real quick that just dawned on me, and that is that you all are in the relationship business, and there's so many people in the room who for years have cultivated relationships with promoters and the artists themselves that give them confidence to come to our city. Like, it's not just as easy as, we're here and we have these facilities. They have to have an emotional connection and a literal connection, and so it's like economic development. It's 5-10 years of relationship building and showcasing, and then all of a sudden the artist comes and they have even more confidence then in coming back. And so I've just had this kind of like economic development strategy through live concerts, which is, I think, almost plays to the sports strategy of what we've done as a city, is just grown this piece of what we do extremely well based on relationships.
It can be very unassuming if you're not in the business. If you're in the business, you think it's the most important thing on the planet. And then you meet relatives and they have no idea the artist that you just sold out the night before, right? It's a niche business. But to your point about the development is that, a young artist coming through a club has a bad experience with either the fan or the venue. They remember that and they tell their friends like, oh, the fans in Fort Wayne were the worst, It's not true. It's not true. It's Evansville. No, I'm kidding. So, but it's true. It's a lingering, and it's such a small world. It's the artists have a crew. Those crew members are on the road all the time, and they come back with the other acts. And those are very important relationships, whether it's the production manager or the tour accountant or whomever. Yeah.
Do you know where Taylor Swift's crew stayed? At the Omni. Probably shouldn't tell you that, but now it's over. And we had to think about and prepare, and the Omni did an incredible job to welcome the crew, not the artist, the crew, because those are the influencers around the entire show.
That actually leads into my next question really well. And when I was first started, Marty and I would go to LA and we'd meet with agents and promoters, and I called them, Marty's going to kill me, what's yours is mine and what's mine is mine meetings. So they were very interesting perspective on our business. But it was interesting because sometimes we would get, Marty would get this great show and I would say, oh my God, how did we get on that stop? Well, the manager's aunt is from Fishers and he wants to come to Indy. And I was like, well, okay, I'll take it if I can get it. And sometimes it's just in the routing. But David, you're looking at a big, the financial part of a big tour. You're going to go out on a big arena tour. It's probably the easiest one to think about, or an amphitheater. How does Indy compete with these other cities? What are you looking at when you're trying to put someone there besides just historical sales data?
Right. Well, avails is a lot, which, I was saying, when you're a busy city, a lot of people want to say like, you can look at the historical, like you're saying. People come through and go, oh, so-and-so artist did this business or this business. But you also have to be a busy city to get more shows. If you're a city that doesn't have a lot of activity, sort of a cold market, which say, you don't want to go because the people in those cities are they're typically not predisposed to want to spend their disposable income on live entertainment. But if there's a busy city, both sports and live music, conventions, et cetera, it's more of a mindset that people go out, right? So that's part of it. This town has people that go out, which is great. The other part of it is that you've invested in the facilities. You guys just did a major multi-year investment at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. If you ask me like, we're in the route and it's X number of miles that so if trucks and buses are gonna drive 400 miles from one city to the next, and no more. That's sort of the radius from one city to the next. The productions become bigger and bigger because they all have to be spectacular productions at the arena level. You just can't come in and, the experience of live is live. It's not about just sitting and watching something like you could at TV. So you got to have the capabilities to put on these massive productions. And then you also have to have the creature comforts backstage, which is another thing that they've done at the Fieldhouse, which is nice. But it also is this great partnership and understanding. So Marty, who's getting more attention than the panelists tonight, Marty does a good job of understanding when we come with a question. He doesn't have to say, let me get back to you. He knows what we're talking about. He walks the walk and talks the talk. So thank you, Marty. It's fewer phone calls like that. So remove the friction in anything in life helps get things done quicker. And when we come to Indianapolis, whether we're calling Lucas Oil and asking about things day to day, I mean, Eric has hired some new people over the last few years that make it incredibly easier for us to come and do the shows compared to the past. We won't mention names, but the team today is great. Thank you very much. It makes it so much easier to pick it up and put it in. When we're talking to Andy, when we're talking to Marty, Mel, you guys make it incredibly easy for us to want to do shows because you've removed the friction, right? The other part of it is that if people buy tickets, yeah, we want to do more shows. And this is just proven to be a town. It also has a town that has venue verticals, i.e., as Jenny was talking about, to develop the acts. People have a spot to play at multiple stages of their career. Some of these other towns, it's either you're big enough to play the big room and there's nothing else to play and there's no history. And you go on sale in some of those towns and go, why didn't it sell so good here? I don't know. No one's seen them before. You know, you're banking on a hit song. We want to bank on people seeing people live and developing those long-lasting relationships and friendships between the artist and the fan.
Okay, Jenny, this is a tough one for you. You started a new music festival. I made Rock and Roll in May. Can you talk about how that came together and why it's different from other festivals and kind of the difficult part about festivals? They're really very unique.
Yeah, unique is one way of saying it. I think the other way of saying it is I've heard folks say, you know, indie is where festivals go to die. And I mean that in a loving way because I've only kind of worked and grown up in the festival space. I think I Made Rock and Roll, for folks that don't know, is 45 in partnership with Gang Gang has a pretty true and real kind of advocacy or storytelling piece to this. And so not only were we really excited to plan a one-day kind of full music festival, but there was also the storytelling piece that was saying, hey, there's actually a real conversation to be had about the roots and the origins and how are we honoring the authorship of the genre that is rock and roll. And more specifically, as kind of telling the story of before there was Elvis Presley, there was Little Richard, right? Or before there was, the Beatles, there was Little Richard, or there were the Supremes. I mean, so how are we actually telling who created and how was that genre really shaped and formed? And so, how do you weave that narrative through, I think, to Dave's point, like a really experiential, kind of impactful experience for fans, and how do we kind of, people want that, right? You want to be told, you want to watch a documentary and or maybe experience and walk through a museum on your own. So how do you kind of blend that with what in this case was music? And so I think the story goes that folks may know Alan Bacon of Gang Gang kind of walked through the African American Music Museum in Nashville and kind of said, like, why aren't we telling these stories? And so kind of coming back to one of our partners and saying, let's think about this differently. And so it was once just kind of a seed and maybe even a moment of frustration, I think really sprouted and grew into what I think was not only a successful year one of a festival that will continue, but also a real culturally formative moment for the city of Indianapolis. We were not only talking about the true authorship of rock and roll and the centering of Black artists, but we were doing it in the middle of downtown. And how dare we in the middle of May do that in Indianapolis? And so, I think the ways in which that came to be was really, again, rooted in kind of relationships. And what I feel most proud of the city is the ability to kind of get as creative as we possibly can in partnership with one another, including everybody on this stage. I think many of you, I've at least been a part of organizations that are partnering. There's a willingness to do that. And so I think this sprouted from maybe even a spark or a catalyst of frustration, and then into this like beautiful partnership that then leads into this wonderful guest experience. And so when we announced the lineup, and a quick story behind this, I think that weaves through much of what we're saying is, this was a lineup with Janelle Monáe. We really came out hot for year one. Janelle Monáe, Gary Clark Jr., Robert Randolph, and when we were kind of thinking through, like, how do we actually blend this, what is rock and roll now, and kind of what is the roots of kind of, someone like shredding a lead guitar like a Gary Clark Jr. This felt like the lineup that would tell that story. But many of these artists, like me, either had just been to the market or they weren't really sure. It's been a long time. And what we did is we really said, hey, there's an advocacy and storytelling piece that we think will resonate with you. And so a story that they love to tell is that we were kind of chasing down Janelle Monáe, and we kind of said, let's hit pause, and hey, Molly and Alan, with Gang Gang, can you write a personal handwritten letter just explaining the importance and the significance of not only this kind of moment and cultural event for the city, but also the impact of this storytelling campaign and this advocacy. Wrote a handwritten letter. Whether Janelle read it or not is to be determined, but she certainly confirmed not far long after that. And so I love to think of that story in the ways that I think we're saying here, and Dave was starting to allude to, in that there is right now an interest and an excitement of artists to connect with their fans. I would also say that for us, anyway, at 45, when we think about partnership, there's also we hope and we believe there's an interest and an excitement of artists to connect with kind of a meaningful platform. And so much of what we do is built into partnerships. You're not going to see 45 leading with massive music festivals around, but we're going to find the ways in which we can leverage partnerships in the city. And we think and hope that that'll bring artists that want to be attached to things that they believe in. And I think I Made Rock and Roll was a really good example of that, based on how people showed up, but also the lineup that we were able to secure.
It was very great. So, Dave, you're probably the best for this one, just to think about the breadth of your career in music. But when I was, younger and my car was littered with cassettes and CDs, and I was probably crashing my car, instead of looking at my phone, I was trying to change the cassette tape. The streaming has dramatically changed the economics of the music industry. And so how has that affected touring?
Napster was something we might have been afraid of, and then, that didn't work out, right? That company went away. Raise of hands. We'll figure out these platforms, just because I kind of always struggle with the marketing team. Who listens to their music on Spotify? A lot of hipsters in the audience, all right. Pandora.
Now everyone's afraid to raise their hand.
Yeah, a lot of coffee shop owners. Okay. And then Prime Music, Amazon Music, yeah, people, because you have it free with Prime membership, et cetera. And then there's multiple apps, whether it's the Odyssey app or the iHeartRadio apps. Yeah, a smattering of people. It's amazing, so like when cable TV first came into our homes, and, it's like I watch, I'm an NBC guy or ABC guy. There's so many choices that all of a sudden the cable TV gave us. And, who watches Alaska gold miners or whatever, what the internet and streaming did was help elevate the niche. You had to have that big rock and roll DJ telling you, as the original influencer, who you needed to listen to. They were the ones telling you that. Now there's an algorithm telling you that, but it's also telling you about new music that it's discovering for you based on your likes, which has been great. So streaming has really opened up the touring industry wide, because it's given a platform for so many other artists to have ears listening to something that otherwise would only have been listened to on X number of radio stations on your FM or AM dial. It's been fantastic. It's allowed more clubs to survive. It's allowed more nights to have the lights on. It allows other artists to come through that otherwise would have had to be, the third or fourth act on a bill. It gets acts to the headline status quicker.
What about, when you think about the economics also of touring, what do you think about merchandise now? It seems to me, I know sort of, at least since COVID, our merchandise per caps for shows have gone up dramatically. I'm obviously wearing an overpriced concert t-shirt myself right now.
Overpriced.
But what, it's fantastic quality, of course.
I was gonna ask you, is it because the prices of t-shirts went up, or because people were buying more t-shirts?
Both, probably.
It is both,
Yeah.
right. Look, young acts need to sell merchandise to help stay on the road. If we're gonna keep tickets affordable, and we still have rising costs for staffing and cleaning, et cetera, it's still hard to pay that third act on the bill a wage for them to keep fuel in the car, or God forbid get a hotel room. That merchandise is a way for them to help put extra money in their pocket. So I think it's extremely important at the lower level to make certain as promoters and venue owners that we're allowing them to make the lion's share, if not 100% of that merch at that level. It helps develop future headliners as well. I mean, most people don't come for the support act. They discover that act when they're there. And I'm telling you, it's like there's a lot of bands that used to be able to go overseas because they would get money from record labels, or they could tour other parts of the country, you know, because they had support from record labels. What streaming has done, though, is it's changed the metrics of how the record label can invest in those bands. They don't have as much money coming in from there. They're relying on live to pay their bills more so than the music that they're selling, right? So merchandise has to replace part of that for a lot of the young acts. Now, the big acts like Taylor Swift, I mean, that's just, I mean, I bet you Taylor Swift's merchandise is the same, you know, GDP as some countries in the world, you know.
We found out that merchandise, and a big win, by the way. Raise your hand if you bought merchandise inside the Indiana Convention Center, okay? That was a big win for the LOC. We said to the Taylor Swift camp and the management, could we please offer a secondary merchandise location where you don't have to have a ticket to buy the merchandise? And it took a little bit of time, and they said yes. So inside the convention center, you could walk in and buy merchandise. Record-setting levels of merchandise sold in Indianapolis, Indiana, over her other 2 stops. Applause.
Yep. It was a great buying experience.
And
yeah.
we tried to make that hospitable as possible and pop up live performing acts thanks to the Arts Council. And so merchandise was a driver. And we had to think about that as a city and not just offer it inside the stadium, but outside as well.
You know, after the pandemic was over and people started going to live events, you know, I kept on always saying, like, prohibition is over, everyone's in the streets drinking. They wanted to brag about it. They didn't, you know, it wasn't, if you followed me on social media, you could see that I pulled my phone out and took a picture, and it was a cool moment, and look at me. But then you could walk around at Meijer or Walmart or wherever wearing your Taylor Swift shirt, and everyone's going, she was at Taylor Swift, right? It's a bragging moment, and you wear it as a badge of honor. My wife wishes I only had 2 concert T-shirts. I got a whole drawer, you know, dresser drawer filled with these things. And when I pull them out, it's a moment of time. It's a memory. It's something you can hold and say, this was a moment of time. And I think it's great. But it's not just the T-shirts. Artists are coming up with other things, and whether it's a $5 button pack or guitar picks, or, you know, the posters are crazy now. How foil print. I mean, people are willing to buy something to show off either on their person or hanging at their house a memory of that event. Yeah, and I think it's so much cooler than the social media photos that people are taking when they're at the event, disturbing the people behind them. Just saying.
I think the one thing I would add, if we're bringing it all the way back down to kind of local, and again, like as a vehicle for partnership, I think what we saw, and we at 45 have tried, and we're you know, we have a team that is thinking about this all the time and is doing a great job at this, but at the local level, there's also this opportunity of merchandise as, you know, this real blend and relationship of fashion and live music is real, right? And when you think about I Made Rock and Roll, for example, you know, our ability as an independent promoter, you know, was to work with Howl and Hyde and local businesses that are doing and creating really cool merchandise. And you think about, you know, local festivals like Treese, who has, again, like they have the merch that people want. I think I Made Rock and Roll people were decorating jean jackets and putting patches and customizing it so that it was not only, you know, hey, I was at this event, you know, this is what it was like for me. And so what were the patches and pins and what am I actually wearing when I walk out that tells the story of where I was, but also as an indication of who I am. And I think this speaks to this.
You became part of that event. Yeah.
Yeah, so then it speaks to this idea that, like, I think, yes, there are certainly people who are kind of like buying tickets to go to see your favorite artist, but they're also going, and especially in this time of post-COVID, to kind of say, like, I want a whole ass experience, right? Like, I want to be there with my friends. I want to, like, you know, I want to participate in this as much as I possibly can. And of course, the ways in which that was limited and, you know, different size venues and so much of what we do is outside in festival space that it gives that creative freedom. But I also think, it kind of is another vehicle for amplifying and partnering with local organizations that, in my belief, you know, people want to be wearing and they're excited and proud to be doing together.
In our role at Visit Indy to promote and market Indianapolis so more people visit, just a thanks to I Made Rock and Roll and Treese. Those are authentic, homegrown festivals and events that we saw an increase in visitation based on zip code analysis and ticket sales. So thank you, because it's not just the big concerts. Yeah, it's an opportunity for Visit Indy to attract even more visitors because of that. So thank you.
I know you hate social media, Dave, but for you and Jenny, can you speak to how important the artist participating on social media, promoting, their music and shows is to ticket sales ultimately?
Yeah, I'll jump in.
I don't hate social media. I just
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to hate social media because it is such, we've talked about this a little bit today, just such an important tool and driver for not only our own venues and perhaps even our own brands, but certainly the artists. And I think we talked about this with streaming, and there's a direct connection now that has never been, necessarily, never been possible before, with a direct connection from an artist to their audience and their fan base. And so there is this direct, not only communication, but there's also this direct, let me get to know you at a different kind of level. Just this past weekend, we have just recently opened, you may also have blurry memories from the old Crackers Comedy Club in Broad Ripple. We just recently have turned that into a small room, 200 to 400 cap room. And we just sold out a show with a local songwriter, Lauren Sanderson. She had a meet and greet. And usually for meet and greets before a show, they might pick up a guitar and play a couple songs. She literally brought a chair out, sat in the middle of the stage, and just wanted to talk to fans. And so some of them she had actually recognized from social media. And so I think there's this, unlike anything we've seen before, this direct connection to their audience and to their fan base. And it also starts to kind of humanize them as, especially if you're growing up as an artist. Certainly this is not the case for Taylor or others. But you're starting to actually recognize faces, which I think when you're on the road you kind of need. And so there's something really personal about that, even as impersonal as social media can feel. And then I think this is real in terms of the direct correlation of ticket buying. Is we had a blip where our Facebook ads weren't working, and you could tell based on ticket sales. Like, that is how people get information now. And in the world of our world, that's also news to them. And so it's in multiple ways is it a direct kind of reflection of how you're going to do and how well you're going to do, both as an artist, but I think as a venue and promoter too.
there's some artists that wouldn't have careers if it wasn't for social media or streaming platforms like YouTube. Teddy Swims is a current real-time example where people, he just decided I'm just going to start putting my stuff out there and following. Turns out it wasn't social media that made him success. It was his, talent that made him a success, but he needed that platform. What I don't like about social media is everyone's feel that they have to, in real time, be live streaming their experience. I sort of akin to like Abe Lincoln sitting in front of you at the play, and you're like, I can't see, right? And I kind of feel if you're in the audience, you have to look past the phones. There's some artists that will say, just put your phones down and enjoy the moment. There's some artists, comedians, who says, lock up the phones now, the yonder bags. And part of it is to protect their craft, right? The other part of it is to try to tell people it's a better experience if you just put your phone down for a minute. One of the last times we did Prince, he did not use the bags, but he told everyone, don't take your phones out. If you take your phones out, you know what, we're going to have you removed. Oh, jeez. We're about halfway through the show, and he says, everyone take their phones out. You can film this song. They were not going back in anyone's pocket, right? But it was, and to that point, everyone was like, they shared it in the moment, right? And I don't mind that people are, first off, don't mind. I love that people are excited about coming to shows. I love that they want to share their experiences. But I kind of like it after it's over for people to post, and here's some photos, or here's a clip. But the constant people trying to stream the entire the entire set from their chair, it's just, I don't know. Raise a hands, no. Who else thinks that's obnoxious? It's, if I'm the first night on a tour, right, I don't have any preconceived notions of what the set's going to look like because I haven't seen it on social media feeds. If I'm halfway through the tour, and Jelly Roll's an example, right? There's this moment at the beginning where he walks out. He just played here, so if you didn't see, I'm not ruining it for you. He walks out from stage left. He walks through the audience. He walks to the back of the arena, gets up on a B stage, and this outline of a house on fire comes down. It's a real cool, touching moment. He walks out with his wife. I mean, the crowd's going nuts. But if you're on social media, it ruins it for you because you didn't ask, you're searching, how does Jelly Roll walk out to the stage? It just came up in your feed, right? And I think those moments somewhat are destroyed. But on the other side, I see that and go, that's pretty cool. I might want to buy that when he comes to my town. So it's like yin and yang.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see those, but they're always better in person.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You cannot
yeah.
duplicate live.
Yeah, you can't. If you want to see it, it's on the Gamebridge Fieldhouse Instagram feed. Our team is sitting here. They did a good job with that. A house on fire. Last question from the audience. Indy has a thriving local music scene. How is local talent integrated into these national shows or some of the ones coming through yours, Jenny? And is there a benefit to that?
Yeah, I mean, we spoke earlier, and I think we've all kind of alluded to the pipeline of venue size and the ways in which not only does that allow you to grow an artist who may be either regionally touring or nationally touring, and maybe even globally touring in some of our cases, but on the other end of that spectrum, right? If we have a room like a lo-fi or what we're trying to do, kind of a turntable, there is a stage then for local artists to kind of come play. And so there is, it might not be every single night of the year, but certainly there is a stage that it makes sense. There's a lot of tours that come through that don't have or don't bring with them their own support act or opener. I think the ways in which we can continue to pay attention and invest in, and I think I Made Rock and Roll is a good example of just the ways folks who are doing this locally, day in and day out, like how are we building relationships with them and not kind of forgetting about them as we're growing, I think, just allows us to build a pipeline of real local talent that want to be on those stages. And sometimes that's the Vogue, and sometimes that's an I Made Rock and Roll stage, and sometimes that is a really small room. But I think, the ways that we're talking about having that pipeline and that inventory of venues, it does matter for local artists, especially as they're kind of figuring out, who am I as an artist? What do I look like and feel like, and is this the right group? And maybe the answer is no, but I think, again, having multiple stages in a city and a thriving music ecosystem, I think only benefits local artists. I think it just allows that opportunity for them to kind of, for playtime, ultimately.
Ditto.
Excellent. I know we also, our friends from the Hi-Fi are here today too, another great local venue that does some amazing shows. So, if you haven't been out to a show in a while, please get out. Encourage your friends to come from out of town, stay in a hotel, help Chris's numbers for the end of the year. I think that's it, Lisa.
Thank you.